it actually.
There we go.
Zoom's been doing that to me lately okay, it says it's recorded. All right, guys, welcome back. We do these every Sunday, as y'all know. Today I have two good friends of mine. This is episode 20. I have two good friends of mine, Shane Thompson and Brian Rice. They both run Wise Choice Fund LP, and they invest primarily in RV parks. So, hey guys, why don't y'all kind of just kick us off, kind of tell us where y'all are from, how y'all got here, and what made y'all start a fund of funds.
Let Brian kick it off. Brian, go ahead.
All right. So I'm from Oregon, actually Southern Oregon. So what made me kick off a fund of funds? Well, I've done one before. It was actually very successful. We got it funded pretty quick. So the second one, well, there's always a need for funds, a need to fund parks. So we decided to start one to be able to basically acquire more parks and, enjoy the cash flow basically. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to get some investors together. We already got some money raised, and we just we're trying to do $5 million per quarter is what we're doing. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I can say I started the fund because Brian told me to. But yeah, so obviously me and Brian were our partners in other little endeavors, and he mentioned it, gosh, what, 7-8 months ago, maybe a little longer when we started it. And we kind of dabbled the idea because up until then I was having some success with capital raising. And I was like, well, how can I transition it to a more concrete effort, a more solidified endeavor? And that's what Brian's like, we should look at a fund. And then Brian brought to me his attention that he'd done prior fund, he had some success, and there was other business he had initial partners to help us kick it off. So that was sort of what brought it to my light. So Brian's kind of been my guidance in terms of more of the legal aspect of it, the initial setup, and I've been focusing more on thinking of ideas and operation and trying to meet people and help us figure out ways to do networking. So the fund was never in my initial thoughts. It seemed too glamorous to do in my career, but Brian kind of bridged that gap, and now here we are. And now it's all right, it wasn't that hard, but now it's just it's a lot of work. Running a fund itself is a full-time endeavor, as we were just saying offline, right? Now you get the setup done, and now we're in this huge phase of marketing and trying to grow and find new novel investors who we don't already know. So yeah, it's been a unique experience, but that's kind of how I got into it. It was kind of, I guess, luck of the draw. Me and Brian became partners, we connected, and I leaned on his shoulders and I kind of rode his coattails, and now here we are.
Brian is a pretty persuasive guy, huh?
I still don't know. I mean, Brian, I don't even mention this all the time. I don't know how Brian found my contact, because Brian called me one day and I was like, who is this guy? Because I think he had RV parks. It was so random. I was like, what? Who are you? I didn't quite understand. That conversation was short. And then all of a sudden, I guess we reconnected a couple weeks later, and then it just kicked off from there. Because we were working on, before the fund, we had Wise Choice Acquisition we started. And that was 7 to 8 of us on that LLC. So I had people coming to me, and then other people coming to me, then Brian came. So I decided just to unify us all as an attempt to grow the RV space. So it started with acquisitions, which I guess kind of leads into the fund, right? So we had acquisitions, looking at parks. Well, how do we buy them? And Brian's like, let's start a fund so we can fund our own parks. But ironically, after starting the fund now, we get more requests for other people's parks. And the 2 parks we just closed are other operators' parks, not our own park. So it's been I got a learning experience, right? We had one direction, it's kind of pivoted, but it's been a right pivot so far.
Well, let's talk about acquisitions a little bit, because Brian, you've mentioned to me before offline too, you've owned and run a couple of parks, right? So what kind of got y'all into acquisitions, and what's the difference, I would say, between, acquiring parks for yourself versus for other operators?
Well, for other operators, we just have to make sure it's a good deal. So we have to do some basic underwriting on top of their own underwriting. And then, then we can go seek investors to fund it. When we're doing our own parks, we have to have management there. We have to, do site visits and be there, plus, fund it as well. So it's a little more involved. When we're doing other people's parks, we just have to help them get it going, and then we can move on to the next park. Yeah, that's the cool thing about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely more effort when we do our own operating, so we made that early decision, which was a smart move, to keep the acquisitions and the fund separate, even though they they share a similar name. We did make them distinct entities so that we could not be cross commingling these different endeavors. But finding other people's parks is easier, right? Because in our community, we get flooded with parks. So now we just have to vet the operator and vet their underwriting and then coincide their due diligence. So we lucked out, our first few parks have been with other operators who we actually know, who actually run their own mentorships, have syndicated for over a decade. So for us, those are easy deployment, especially for a new fund and protecting our investors' money. It was useful to find people who are maybe way more experienced than we are. That way our values are aligned, that we had an additional layer of security to vet the deal. So that's kind of been how we initially kicked it off. And that obviously is much easier to just find someone who's got a track record, deploy capital, do some quick due diligence than it is sourcing through acquisitions and then LOI, and then your own due diligence and then funding. So
yeah, it's a quicker process as well.
What are some of the things that y'all do look for though, in the operators as well as in their deals that help you protect your investors' money?
Well, we do underwriting on top of this, the park sponsors underwriting. We look at it as well. We have to make sure it's a deal, make sure that we're going to actually make some money on it as well as not lose money. Yeah.
We have some of these conversations. It's always, as we learn ourselves, it's a constantly moving target. But I would say something we learn too is probably need someone who has at least 2, if not 3 existing parks. And they need to have at least understood how to scale them from a self-operator to a third-party private operator. Because most of the parks, when we're deploying capital to the fund, we're looking for at least $1 million minimum investment. So we're not going to land on someone who's oh, this is my first park, I'm going to run 10 pads, right? You got to have enough pads to, in this scenario that say you don't perform well, that we could remove you and the park could still achieve some success without you. We could easily operate without coinciding on you. So definitely multiple parks of experience, have somewhat at least remove themselves from daily operations to some capacity. And then I guess showing a track record that they know the area as well or know the park. Because obviously underwriting a park is step 1, but also in step 2 is knowing the area. What's the drive? Is there enough traffic to it? We looked at a couple parks we saw that were super crazy phenomenal numbers, but there was how was it, Brian? 70 people in the town. It was so small, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And it's no one ever goes there, so it'd only be useful as long-term tenants. But there was no one lived there, so the deal was great. I'm this is great. The numbers make sense, but it was all pro forma based, and there's just no way to make sense of it. So the area was another way to do it. Make sure the operator can say, hey, I know the area, I know the drive, I know what's around there. I've done some studies, and that's kind of another lead indicator for us.
So would you say then that's probably the biggest gut check to those performer numbers is location?
Well, it's a major factor for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess location then is a true value add, because some operators would offer a park at a lower cap rate. So it's almost like a turnkey scenario, which is useful for us on an acquisition side. Cause all right, well, maybe we'll buy and hold it for a long strategy or cash flow. But on the fund side, right, we need a means to recapitalize that initial investment. So we need a strategy to grow it or evaluate it for at least 2 to 5 times its initial value. So in that scenario, if it's not stabilized enough, then we'll buy it at a value so we can grow it. So I would say in addition to the area, it is what's the value add to it? If it's too stable, it's not, for our fund particularly, it's not a good investment because we need a way to recuperate our money. Otherwise we're stuck in for 15 or 20 years at that point.
Yeah.
Yes, that way you're not, like you said, you're not buying something with no legs, but you're also not buying something that's too well stabilized, because there's that sweet middle ground where, like you said, you can add value, and that's how when y'all buy the park, you're able to sell it 3 to 5 or 3 to 7 years, I think is what your offering memorandum says, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, really in a very high level, does it make enough money to service the debt, whether there's already debt positions in place, or is enough also to service us as an equity partner, right? Underwrite us as debt if they want to, but service our payments, service the payments, and service the payment to operate the park, and still create what we call the oh shit fund. And then we'll consider, right? But sometimes people are skipping the oh shit fund, they're not counting for like a third party vendor, or they're not counting for like a third party's investment. And they're like, this is just so lean that if you miss like one campsite or one RV spot, like you're negative cash flow. So we definitely looking for it to be more than we need it to be so that we can account for multiple mistakes to occur so that we can still be positive, right? If we're writing at 70% occupancy, but we can still break even at 30%, well, that 40% is a huge variance for us. That gives us a lot of room to like still make mistakes and still perform.
Yeah, and you can't get people oh shit returns if you can't afford no shit fund.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's the truth, right? Like you guys were talking about, y'all just got those 2 parks under contract, and we were talking about the projected numbers because we were doing some raising for you guys. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like if somebody brings you 100 grand, to invest in these parks, talk about a little bit about the projected returns and what y'all predict that gets them.
Take it out, Brian.
All right. So like on a $100,000 investment, you're gonna get, was it 10% return, and then quarterly distributions. But over 5 years, it's gonna be like $300,000 you're gonna get back, roughly. Probably a little, most likely a little more. And so you get that, plus you get equity split in the deal. So we you get about 80% equity split for the amount that was invested. And then quarterly distributions, equity split, and then 10%, it all adds up. It accumulates pretty well.
Yeah, I want to say the few parks we just did, they were pretty phenomenal numbers. Once again, they were a little bit larger endeavors with an experienced operator, and I think our multiple was like 3.42, 3.46 pro forma on that capital. So
Right.
as Brian said, 100K in gets you like 350,000 back potentially, right?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty well performing park. I would say a really good park is like that 3 to 5 range. We typically promote 1.5 to be safe, but that's a pretty low minimum. When we underwrite, we look for at least a 2x multiple, but we hope we've been expecting that we're looking at like 2.5 to like 5 range, and probably like 3 being that sweet spot.
Yeah, three would be the target we look for.
Yeah. So, and do y'all's fund, are the investors allowed to claim depreciation too, or is that just, are they only getting the appreciation of the parks?
They can claim depreciation. They can claim 100% of their investment the first year, and then 20% every year after that.
Is it
Yeah.
100% the first year?
Yeah, it is 100% of what they invested. Yeah.
Nice. That's incredible because I had heard it was 50, but if it's 100% the first year, then that allows you to basically, like you said, claim the depreciation on more than what you've invested in over that time frame.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think that number varies. Obviously, Brian's not speaking on behalf of like a CPA. But yeah, I mean, it's probably up to that number, but realistically, yeah, a lot of people may not get all of it, but yeah, you can appreciate most of it. And then it is like incremental the consecutive years after. So it is cash flow, appreciation, and depreciation. And then obviously equity, right? Which is that appreciation factor.
Mhm.
Right. And that's how you get to that 3 to 5x return on the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with a couple deals, what we'll see is like with the cash flow alone over like a 5-year hold, you'll almost like return like 1.5 times the money, and then the extra 1.5 is when that refi or that sale occurs.
That makes sense. So they're getting a steady, basically, they're getting a steady paycheck coming back to them over a period of time, but then they also get, like you said, a nice big lump sum when the park sells.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is also one of the reasons what we can dive into is in our current fund operation, we prefer an existing park that's being taken over and not so much new development. We are exploring it, but that is, that's a different risk profile, it's a different endeavor. And there's like, we get into this scenario, we have to over raise so much because most of the time we're not guaranteed quarterly returns. So we have to like modify how we raise to do what we told our investors we would do. And that becomes a whole different dynamic. So we've looked at that, but that's probably something we wouldn't do. So we would definitely stick for now in the foreseeable future, primarily existing parks that cash flows had service the debt and have room to multiple.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think, like you're saying, development is a whole other risk profile, and some people really, really love it and some people really, really hate it. But I think taking over existing parks makes a lot of sense. And then do you guys just have other operators that you line up as your buyers essentially for when those two parks do go for sale then down the line?
Yeah. Yeah, so what we do is we look for portfolio buyers that want to buy like package deals. So usually those are hedge funds or other big insurance companies that just want to park their cash. Those are our usual buyers.
That's
Yeah.
part of like our value add as well. So like if the operator already has it, that makes our initial investment more secure because like, hey, that's part of your exit strategy. If they don't have it, it's still a consideration, but then we may be interested in more equity because we may help you go source that private equity or mid cap or large cap equity to take you down on that resale. But we're going to look for more money for our fund if we also have to go solicit that end buyer or solicit for your exit strategy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could see that too. Like, if you have an operator in place, you could always sell your equity back to them, or
Yeah.
you could use that as a better pitch towards those hedge funds, those portfolio buyers.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, like I said, our first investments right now we did, right? They're with the same operator, right? So if we like operators who are experienced, like the one we deployed here with, because they have multiple parks and multiple parks ready to go. So for them, there's even more equity to be had based upon their pro forma because they have pro forma for the park, but also pro forma for the portfolio. So if we're funding 3 or 4 of their like 10 parks, so they're going to offload 10 parks in 5 or 7 years in the same scenario, right? Well, our multiple is significantly higher because to a hedge fund, like, oh, this is a $70 million park portfolio, not a $7 million park portfolio. So that allows us to actually get more equity for ourselves as GP and for our investors without having to do any additional work. The operators already suffice that and brought more value add to the picture by doing so.
And so it sounds like you're also kind of, I wouldn't say relying on, but you're utilizing the operators to bring you more deals, right? Like if the operator brought you one deal and then he brings you a second deal over that 5 to 7 years, they're just gonna keep bringing them to you until you can build a nice big portfolio.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Like
I would
when,
say you wouldn't fund them all though, right? I mean, I think Brian, I don't know, maybe we could absolutely, I wouldn't fund an operator all of his parks because I don't want to take all that risk. But if he's got like 5 parks, I'll take on 2, maybe 3, but I want someone else to take on the other few. And then that's where the value add comes.
Mhm.
So
What would you guys say to somebody that, like, obviously you said you don't work with most people that are first time operators, but what would you say to that person that's looking to become a first time operator? Maybe they're underwriting their first RV park leads.
I would say learn from somebody else first.
for sure. Yeah, I think the big question is, are you looking to be owner operator or are you trying to be absentee? A lot of the deals that actually are like make sense number wise, I feel like we see quite a bit and that are like pretty easy to take down are typically going to be like an owner occupier or maybe not owner occupier. You're going to have to hire like someone who lives locally or give free rent to someone already on site and then like probably interact with that person daily, 3 or 4 hours a day, strategize to make it actually move it forward. It would become like a part-time, if not full-time job. Some people we not met, they've bought in that middle space where there's no one in place. So part of their value add is to put in a third party, but they are underwriting with the assumption that I need to like be that operator for 6 to 12 months before I can hire it in. So I think operating is a big component because if you're running a wholesaling business or you're running your W-2 and then you buy this park, well, for me as an investor, like, is that a safe investment? Because like, can you do both things or are you going to drop your W-2? You're going to drop the park first. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think a lot of people overestimate their abilities and their deals, right? Like you said, if most of them only pan out as you being the owner operator, or even as you being the full time babysitter of an operator, well, is it really a deal?
Not really, not usually.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a good experience, all right. It's not something that the fund would be willing to go, but like, it is. If someone wants to do it, they have the position. That would be a way to really get good at it. One of our prior partners actually he worked on a park, so he was like doing our team calls while like checking people in. So he would give very useful insight because he would be learning things that were like you would never account for underwriting. Like, oh, me and Brian, I learned some stuff. Like, got to account for like raccoon infestation. account for like your golf carts being destroyed by bears. Like, I didn't underwrite for that. I will now. I didn't think about that. So, so certain things like that like are great, as Brian said, to avoid that, connect to someone who's already done it. But otherwise, be prepared to do some heavy lifting.
Note to
Mhm.
self: include oh shit fund for bears.
Yeah.
It was the funniest cause. Like, hey, sorry, late guys. I had to clear out a family of raccoons who destroyed our golf carts last night. I'm like, oh, okay. I'll put that. They got alligators, or is it down in Florida, right? It's got alligators coming in on site. It's got like alligator removal on standby. Like, oh, okay. There's a lot of nuances I didn't think about. Depending on, it also goes back to demographic and geographic location, but I was like, there's always something you don't think about for underwriting.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what we have, government agencies for, like the National Park Service, I think spent millions and millions of dollars. They had to create the perfect trash can that's too difficult for bears to use, but easy enough that people will actually use it.
Right.
So we let them take the blunder first.
Yeah, it says nuances like that. But then also said having those trash cans on your site also can entice bears to be like stuck on your site. But then you have like customer concerns like, oh, there's bears around, or someone got hurt by a bear. Now the park's getting sued for it, like, so all those things are going to underwriting, like, oh man, like what's my risk liability here?
Yeah, I think that's a good point because, you and I have talked about like parks in my area. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them for sale. And actually, one of them I think finally went under recently. It was named after Jellystone, like from Yogi Bear and everything. I think their risk profile was just too high. Like they had like a water slide, and the water slide was not to code. It was built in like probably the 60s.
Uh-oh.
And I think they just got sued enough times that they was like, well, I guess we probably shouldn't own a park anymore.
Yeah, too many water slide related accidents. I mean, it's a weird thing to say out loud, but yeah, I mean, that's exactly a concern, right? That's also a concern, which I was looking at a while ago. Some other parks are like, they're going to add in a pool versus a splash pad, right? Well, there's different, like, you have to also factor in your insurance costs associated with each of those additional add-ons, right? So like a splash pad versus a pool, there's a multitude of different insurance requirements. And you might
Yeah.
have additional staff. You might have to have some jurisdictions require you to put like a lifeguard on duty, right? Or the splash pad, you may not have that, maybe lower maintenance, but there may be like more slip and fall accidents. So there's like nuances with just that trigger other expenses or associated risks.
Right. And most people don't even consider that their homeowners is going to go up when they put in a pool, let alone are they thinking about, if I put in this pool at an RV park where people pay me to come stay, what's the likelihood they're going to sue the piss out of us?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. Always bad apples too. Some people will just come along just to make a scene, try to win a buck either way. So
Yeah, that was one of the things I had to do way back when, like in my early 20s when I worked at the casino, was we had to prove slip and fall accidents on camera. And we had one guy, we caught him clearly just walking up the handicap ramp, and he said he slipped and fell, and he never slipped and fell.
yeah. So it's one bad apple, right? You could put your whole park under, because we're not even talking, $100 million. Most of these parks are 1 to 8, 1 to 5 million. Like one suing incident in that park is done, completely done.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the size of the parks. How many pads are you guys looking for typically when y'all are looking at parks?
So typically we're looking for 50 spaces minimum, 50 spaces to 100, and then go from there. We always want to be able to add spaces as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's for the fun side, right? We may consider a little bit smaller if we do something like, hey, we're going to take a park down ourselves and keep it out of the fun, but 50 is probably a good spot, regardless, right? Because usually isn't just enough at that point. You can potentially service the debts, hire a third party manager of some capacity, pay whoever need to, and still take home a profit. But I mean, 50 does, that cuts it close, right? Realistically, you're getting closer to like 80 plus where you start to feel a little bit of wiggle room, than 100 plus. You're going to spend a lot more for it, but you're going to have a much more of a turnkey scenario.
That makes a lot of sense because all the ones I see for sale in all the groups and whatever, they've been like 10 pads, they've been 36 pads. And I can't imagine too many scenarios where you can be an absentee owner in that.
You can't. You got to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian's big because Brian, you got a couple pads that he owns on your own, and those are a bit smaller, right? So how do you manage? How do you operate those?
They're self-managed, so like I have basically a park host there. So park host, they self-manage it and they just report occasionally. That's how that works. Park
Gotcha.
host.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, it just well, you said it earlier, Shane. It creates a whole nother job for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that, Brian, so how do you like what kind of time do you see on an investment like that? And like, do you have to um like routinely speak to this person, or did you luck out someone who knows how to run the ship, or how did you work that together?
So for me, I speak to them like once a week. They were experienced already, so it kind of helps a lot. They were, basically a park manager for other parks, so they know what to do. Yeah, we talk regularly, and then if there's anything that needs to be done, they just tell me, and I go. We go together. We find local people to help do it, basically.
Gotcha.
With
Yeah.
them, are you doing like a GM salary plus a free rent on site, or how did you structure that?
So with them, I give them $1,000 a month plus a free site. That's all they get, and they're pretty happy with that because they're really not doing anything else. They're just there's they pick up some trash and that's about it. Because there's landscapers already that come in, and then the trash guys come in. So yeah, it's pretty low maintenance for them.
Are they retired?
Yeah, yeah, they are.
That's what I'm saying, because Brian said nothing, right? So you gotta find someone who's experienced, who's retired, because most people are gonna be like $1,000 a month, not interested, right? But I
Yeah.
assume they're getting other means of income, maybe social security, I don't know, but or they're retired, they've got stuff in their trust, but they got some money else, because no one's gonna take a job for $1,000 a month and like live it up, so. There's
Well, yeah,
gotta be
but you get free
circumstances.
space as well.
Yeah,
That's worth $1,000 there. Well, 850 a month.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
so
25,000.
they're getting close to 2 grand a month in compensation for
Right.
managing. It sounds like it truly is like part time for them. They're just there on site.
It is part-time, but yeah, they have to kind of manage people and take care of things as they're there. So yeah, it's completely part-time for sure.
I'd probably do it, but the only thing I want to do is drive the tractor and run around and cut the grass.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I said, it's gotta be the right individual, because as Brian says, no, there's a situation here where he's got the right person. He has other investments to like support if there's ever a gap. He could fund like an oh shit scenario, right? If this person leaves, right? I'm sure Brian can go find someone, or bridge a gap for a while. Or Brian's remote himself. He could go spend the time if he had to. As a worst case scenario. But like I said, he's has other endeavors and other means of income. So like if someone's like scrambling around and starting out and trying to buy an RV park, it becomes a lot of risk where you're all of a sudden that person quits or walks away. Like, can you afford to hire someone quickly? Do you have the means to go do it yourself? Like, you got to have enough wiggle room to set back that oh shit fund to figure out if these people leave or go, because they're not literally like an employee. I mean, they're kind of there as like on a good faith scenario that they're getting a kickback, but they can just leave at any time.
They could for sure.
So
But
Well, I guess that's part of the pros and cons of RV parks, right? Is like it's very low as far as employee count is that you need, but also with that being low, it only takes one to leave. That might be all you have.
yeah, for sure. It is a risk, but usually it works out.
yeah,
Yeah.
which
Because
is
there's
why. Go
there's a whole
ahead.
network of like park hosts where they actually want to go to the next park and be the host and be there for like 6 months. So that's a good thing. There's a good source of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's got to be a handful of people that just hop park to park, and I'm sure you could probably even just grab one of them and be like, "Hey, guess what? Stay here
Right.
for a while. Just
Yeah,
stay here for a while. Manage this.
yeah,
We'll give you a free spot."
it works out. They love it.
What kind of amenities are you guys seeing that parks have or don't have, in fact, that you might be able to add that create that additional value add?
Shane?
There's a mini, right? The big ones you see, right, is firewood, ice, and propane.
Yeah.
Propane can be tricky, right? Because either a couple things, you can be a distributor of propane, but if you have to fill propane, there's usually a different jurisdiction license to actually fill the propane. So some people either fill it on site or they, the big cage where they get it shipped in every month and they store the containers. But those are like the big three that are like low hanging fruit. Wi-Fi is a big one. Wi-Fi, we've learned through the endeavors, is no longer a selling point for an RV park. It's like required. So like you don't have it, like you don't have a park. If you don't have RV, you don't have a park. So it's a staple as like electrical and water is. So things like that. Things we've seen more recently are like an additional, whether it's in the park or like affiliated with a neighboring commodity, but it's like bike rentals, kayak rentals, or tours. We've looked at a couple parks that actually had horseback riding, ATV trails. Which you haven't gotten into yet, but additional, like some of these parks have on the lake, right? So they have boat moorage. People actually put their houseboats there. They have clamping on there, whether it's a cabin or it's like a floating geodesic dome site. But I mean, one of the things about RV parks, right? It's so great that it's really like, think of it as like raw land. Like, what can you build on raw land? If you have water, what can you put on land and water? Well, anything you want, right? In essence, so gosh, some people are doing like what's called like geocaching, right? They're putting like these like mazes and puzzle games and like in the trees in the forest, and then you get there and you can like open a map or buy a map or use your phone and like go on like tours through the park, pools, water slides, as you mentioned, hot tubs, bathrooms, whether then obviously you got a dump station or is it actually connected. I mean, the list goes on, right? There's so many ways to do it. It's just really what's there and like what's like initially like your biggest bang for the buck, right? I wouldn't go all those. I would pick the top 2 or 3 and hone in. Something we learned last week, there's a lot of parks now that are becoming geared towards like demographics, either male, female, LGBTQs, like so even like subdividing your demographic can also niche the park and how it's presented.
For sure.
Be itself its own value add. So
Yeah, because I've noticed the parks that I've stayed at least, like the amenities have been like we have a general store where they're getting maybe 30% margin on whatever they're just reselling, and they've got vending machines, and that's about it.
That's it.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean that itself can be that's a double-edged sword too. So you can either own that store, right, and then sell stuff, or you own the building and lease it to someone else. So you become that's probably my preferred option. I'm not sure around, but like I don't want to operate the store. I'd rather just rent it to whoever wants to operate it. And like I'll just collect rent. If you don't do well, we'll place someone else in there.
Yeah, I agree. I'd go that way as well. Just lease it out to somebody, let them run it.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much fun they gotta have, managing inventory, buying t-shirts, buying candles or whatever else, fire starters, firewood, all the other kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
We've underwritten in both ways from existing parks. We've seen it be a good value add, like bring 20-30% additional revenue. And I've also seen it be the reason a park doesn't survive, is that they throw all their capital into sustaining the general store. And it takes away, like they're losing money every month because of it. So I've seen people actually shut it down and took a vacant spot and just put up like a little, like just build like a shed and restart over and just put like firewood and ice by it because the general store is bleeding them. I think Brian, I think that's one we looked at was I think like a year ago in North Carolina, South Carolina.
Yep, North Carolina.
General store was their biggest pain point. And also I think what's is under SBA loan it was attached to, and they wanted to subdivide that where the store was away from the park, but they had to fully pay off the debt servicing first before they could subdivide the land. So like it's a weird scenario, right? Or we thought it was a value add, actually became a proposition for failure because it was like costing so much money with bad management. The cost of your resources was too high. So it's a double-edged sword. You just have to know the area if it makes sense or not.
What are some of the big pain points you guys are seeing in the RV park space? Obviously, general store being a big one, but what kind of other stuff are you seeing that is causing these parks to kind of go up for sale or just not perform?
I'd say occupancy, the lack of a reservation system, and a lack of website, and people, all they have is like a phone number to call in, and half the time they're not answering. So yeah.
And that goes back to like self-operating, right? So if someone's self-operating and they got like check-in guest and be the front desk person, well, then they might be gone for an hour and a half at a time. They can't get calls because it's like might be a landline still for all we know, right? So they're running around the park and they're missing opportunities.
Yeah, for sure.
And just lack of, I guess, I say it maybe correctly, but not lack of drive, but like lack of need, maybe, right? 'Cause a lot of people who own these parks have been on them sometimes 20, 30, 50 years. I mean, there's a park here by my house that the owner's been on for like 47 years. But he's made so much money for so long now that there's no need to like hit market rent or hit market revenue because he's got so much appreciation, so much depreciation. He already makes, way more money he's ever made. So that's not a reason this goes under, but that's where the value, that's a reason for that park owner to kind of like let the park seem like it's dragged on because they just don't have a need to go above and beyond to clean it up. That's obviously where we come as a buyer, right? It's a great opportunity for us, but that's the reason a park may start to decline compared to the market because they just don't have the need. They're just letting it ready to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that's where TJ Wynn, him and I did a podcast episode a few weeks ago, and he's acquiring right now an RV park for similar reasons. Like old couple, they just want to retire. They've been running a park for 50 years and hadn't had any time with their grandkids. So they're like, well, we're in our 70s. Like, we should probably spend time with them now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you find those deals out. We actually, funny enough, we had someone total one of our Turo cars like early this year. I was on the phone with the claims adjuster. The claims adjuster happened to live by, and she was pitching me parks her family owned in the Tri-Cities where I live, and they've been there about the same thing. She said they've been there like 35 years. I don't know if they even do it anymore. It's been there for 35 years, and it probably hasn't been updated at least 2 decades.
Right.
So I mean, it's funny you can find opportunities behind the same story. It's which is a blessing curse, right? So they've had it for so long that they may be doing something at least enough right to keep the doors open, right? But the question is, can you take it over in a quick enough time, make sense of the deal? Because most deals, right, you can probably make any deal a deal if you have the time and the resources. But how long do you want to hold? How long do you want to bleed the money for? So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
because like most parks will cash flow at 30% occupancy. So you just gotta be able to improve it, get more people there consistently.
Well, I was going to say that's one of the big selling points, I think, for this asset class over other asset classes too, right? Like if you guys were looking at high rise multifamily units, like those probably aren't going to cash flow unless they're like 70, 80% occupancy as opposed to 30.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, and we're on terms typically too. We're not having to use bridge loan or restructure debt every 3 to 5 years. Like it may be seller financing and one simple like long-term SBA loan or maybe a conventional loan for 20, 25 years. So we're not having to like just exchange debt all the time. It can be as simple as like a small business transaction or like almost like you're buying an SFR, right? It can be more in simple terms. And we know similar returns as well, right? With a fraction of the injection of capital.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good that's a good point. Like you said, it can, you can get way more. I didn't even think about that. You can get way more on seller finance probably than you can with those bigger assets like that.
No,
And
yeah,
your
for sure.
way lower too.
Yeah. That's usually, it's an individual you're typically dealing with or a family. You're not dealing with, another professional service, at least, in like these smaller parks, I would say 1 to 5 range, maybe up to 10 million, but 1 to 5, 1 to 8 million range, you're kind of dealing with like mom and pop. So if they like you, you like them, it can usually be some handshakes to resolve that. It doesn't have to necessarily be all about the numbers, People may be ready to go for, I think we've heard about people buy a horse trailer or buy them a new RV and they can go do their own RVing and take off their RV. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it can be as simple as that. And that's what you do to get the deal done. Yeah, you don't have to go raise money or go chase down a new capital stack to make sense of it. So
That's pretty meta, Shane. That's a lot of RVs.
what's that?
That you would buy their RV park so they could take their own RV and leave the RV park to go RV.
All right.
Oh, we've heard that, right? Because some people started their life as wanted to be in the RV world. So they got an RV, found a park they like, and they might have bought it 30 years ago, and then they bought out more than they can chew, and they got trapped in it. Now it's come like a second endeavor, and then they've been there for 30 years. And they're like, "Oh, I really want to get the heck out of here now. I've been in the city way too long. Cut my road trip short 30 years ago." So
And like I said, they just got trapped by it. They didn't know what to do. They got this thing. It makes money, maybe, or it at least makes enough to keep the doors open, which is more than what most people can say.
Yeah. Well, it become, it probably became their full-time income at one point, right? So just like it became like a W-2 job, so they were trapped because it was location dependent for them, or they couldn't figure out how to automate it, or it didn't make enough to automate it, so they had to be owner operators.
Mhm.
Is that a common thing you see there in that space too? Is those like golden handcuffs basically?
Oh yeah, for sure. They get stuck there because they can't leave. So they have to stay there managing the park, and they can't go anywhere else. They can't get a job. They can't, do another business. So the park usually doesn't get maintained. It doesn't get improved either. So those are good opportunities.
Right. And maybe they make a decent income for themselves, but even if they do, it might, like I said, the park might get repairs, but it might not get maintained, or it might get maintained, but might not get improved.
Yep.
It just goes back to their need, right? They might not need it because it suffices their lifestyle, but like, they may be leaving, they could be doubling their income by what they're leaving on the table. But it's like, do you have the energy? Do you want to go hire and raise money and hire contractors when you could be 70, 80? Like, you might just be like, I don't care anymore. So
Yeah, well, I imagine once they get to be that old, they really don't care. If you ever talk to people of that demographic, they definitely don't care about you or your feelings or what you
Yeah,
think about their park.
exactly.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how my parents are. They're retired. They're like moved out the middle of nowhere. They have no desire to go mess around or do anything. They just like want to be left alone and just hang out. Like, I don't blame you.
There we
Well,
go.
it gives me hope. I'm 31 and I feel that way now.
You're just an old guy then. You're just old at heart.
Yeah, man, I just want to be left alone and do my own.
Working on it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how fast you'll get there where you're at on the West Coast.
Yeah, as I said, it's a tricky game, right? Brian's got a unique portfolio, right? Because Brian has like Midwest properties for cash flow, but you also get stuff on the West Coast for appreciation, right? You need both. So yeah, so the West Coast, right, is expensive, but you also have huge like increases in appreciation that you don't get where you are, right? I think I mentioned before, my parents' house was like 25 years. They grew like a few $1,000s a year. Out here we've seen homes double, triple value in 5 years.
Sure.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about just you, Shane. If you wanted to be left alone and go live in the middle of nowhere, cost of living out there is, you got a little bit higher to shoot for than most people
Oh
do.
yeah. Well over $1 million.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, so we're taking this full circle and full heart. Our goal is to move out our place by May, try to find land here, and we're gonna live in an RP for we're thinking 2 years. We're thinking about building a house, or there's a land we might just buy it and put it out. So our two of our friends just bought their land on the water here and just bought RVs yesterday. We actually took a look at it. They're gonna live in their RV for a while, but we're thinking about the same thing. So yeah, we can get in the woods and the mountains here because we're right at it, but like, yeah, it's still like an RV and land, still like 600,000 a year just for a couple acres. So
Yeah.
Oh, I believe it. That was my plan too. It's like, bro, if I can but at least here, land's way cheaper. I could buy for 600,000. I could get probably 100 acres.
uh, we saw, I saw what was it, like 11 acres over here for 1.8 million, and it's
Wow.
not, and only like 3 acres is buildable.
That's
Okay.
a lot.
Like, all right, but yeah. So I mean, funny enough, the point is that we are going full circle. We're actually looking to move into an RV and like take this more to home going forward and actually live on land and give that experience. And that's just because not only because obviously it's a cool cost measure, but we're just excited to do it. We really want to be more just like RVers. We want to be more in nature, more in that, and we can exchange a simpler living and get out our land and just kind of be isolated, be comfortable, have room for the pets, have our campfires, and not have to worry about all the other chaos. And you do it, do it at half or a fraction of the cost. So
I just
There you
want to sit in that way when a hurricane comes, I can drive my house away.
go.
I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise you just go buy a new house and wheel it in, right?
I mean, I could, but that was my thought. I was like, bro, I can just go get a motor coach, and then just that way, if hurricane comes through, it was just parked on land anyway, man. Like, what are they gonna do? The hurricane's gonna rip the utilities out the ground? Like, I doubt it.
Yeah. That's like affordable housing. I mean, obviously, that's something that Brian could touch on, right? Because we haven't gotten to that part yet, but one of the important things about what we look at as well is that the housing crisis is high now, right? I mean, affordability is unique. I was just at a Master Builder Association conference 2 days ago. We're looking here locally in Washington at some of the utility rates, and they did this cool study. So from 2021 to 2020, the average rate for like a megawatt of power for the utility company was $38. And since 2021 to 2024, it's now $80. So the cost of power has doubled in just 4 years. And they're strictly saying that it's not because of supply chain, it's actually because of global warming that they're seeing the need for more utilities for it.
Wow.
So that's what they're driving that to these homes now, and they're electrifying homes, which is funny. It's an increased cost. It's also an increased cost on the power grid. So we're seeing this like convolution of how to make sense of the money, but all it is right now is just it continues to rise. So that's the segue to say that Brian does Section 8 housing as well, but also the RVs is unique because they do serve as a means of affordable housing, which is I was just saying, we're gonna go move to RV on some land, it's gonna cost us less than probably 50% of the cost it would be for us to buy the same house. So
Mhm. So like Section 8, it's guaranteed cash flow for this, pretty much for life. You just gotta maintain the homes and find the right tenants. You're good.
Yeah, Tyler and I were talking about that actually because he has an RV park down on the coast, and around here they're popping up new light natural gas plants. So RV parks are becoming the new temporary affordable housing for all these people that are working in the natural gas industry.
Oh yeah, they call those man camps.
yeah,
Man
see a lot
camps.
of those in Texas quite a bit in the oil refineries. We tend to steer away from those because they make us it's hard to underwrite because it's like I have to know so much about the politics and like what the regulations, because like here in Washington, right, they are trying to ban gas completely. Like you actually, if you build a home, you actually get de-incentivized and you actually have to spend more money if you build a gas home to make it code compliant. So like certain areas like this, right, that actually would be a devalue of its work because I would know like, hey, that's gonna be shut down in 5 years. I'm not gonna buy there. It's gonna be worth nothing. So when we underwrite our parks, we definitely try to look for more stable tenure, right? Whether even if it's long-term stay or a mixture of day stays, right? But we want it to be 6 months or longer of stay ideally, and also like have been that way for 10 plus years ideally, right?
Yeah, well, that is the one
That
good thing.
was
Us
sorry.
is, well, you'd probably agree with this, Tyler. That's the one good thing about us is that like our state economy is tied into LNG. So
Nice.
you know, oil and gas is up there, probably our largest economic interest besides like tourism from New Orleans.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree. But I mean, I agree to what you're saying. Shane. Shane, is it?
Yep.
Yep. And that's like I have an RV park. It's not technically an RV park. They let like the parish do like a temporary permit to allow RVs because of the influx of people coming with RVs. So, and I see a lot of RV parks going up now. And I've been owning these 5 acres of land. It has 4 mobile homes on it for about 7 years now. And so like all of a sudden, boom, there's RV parks going up all over the place. And I'm kind of getting in on the action a little bit, but I'm like, should I go borrow private money to put 20 pads, you know, or is this a 5 year thing? And then in 5 years, everything's going to be worthless, so I'm kind of like in the middle here of like, what do I do with this RV
Well,
park? And I was able to put four pads on it. I'm getting 800 a pad, I'm paying lights and water and all that.
there you go.
Um, so it's going good right now, but I'm like, I want to expand it and convert it into like an actual mobile home park because right now it's still zone, residential. So I have to go through a lot of hoops and go through some things and spend some money to get this thing. I was thinking about 100 grand to get about a good 12 to 24 pads. Um,
Yeah.
and that's just from quotes from getting the rock, getting the fire hydrants in place, all the things that the parish needs me to do to get it going. Um, maybe a little wash unit and stuff. But I'm like, man, should I borrow the money, spend this money, with this maybe being like a temporary thing, it could be a 5-year, 10-year thing, but after it's done, it's like there's so many RV parks here. It's kind of like
Well,
a supply demand thing, right?
yeah, you could always turn it into a mobile home park if the RV park thing went away. You could turn it into a more stable mobile home park and you'd still have the park and the
Yeah,
income. Yeah.
yeah,
And then Lord knows, Tyler, that like you and I said before, like that's all you see when you go down that way. I went down past his RV park for a bachelor trip this past weekend, and we went bow fishing. And like Tyler was like, dude, you're only gonna see RV parks like left and right, left and right, left
yep,
and right. Sure as shit, everywhere you go, it's like single wide, double wide campers, mobile motor coaches just parked everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah.
Is there any concerns for competition, or are you in enough spot where you would stay occupied right now?
No, yeah, it's occupied. It's there's like a Facebook page where it's like the LNG for the plant, anytime I haven't been vacant yet besides once. And I mean, I posted in there, hey, I got a spot available. I had about, 8 to 10 people like, hey, I need it, because they're like sleeping in their trucks and there's nowhere to go at this
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
so yeah, no, I'm not really worried about the competition aspect of it like right now. It's more like later down the line if this job isn't here, something of that nature happens, once they finish the job, I think then it's going to be like a supply demand issue. There's going to be all these spots and nobody really to rent them. And it's just going to drive the prices, the rent down.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple, yeah, as Brian said, I think your best bet would be go RV because it is a smaller lift, but then look to mobile home. Or I've heard people talk about where like you could buy RVs from the neighboring parks, maybe move them onto your lot and then make those like you rent those out like an Airbnb or rent
Yeah.
them out like a mobile home situation. And we
Yeah.
found that sometimes guys who stay in these spots, when they're ready to leave, they're willing to leave that RV there and you can buy off them at a discount and just drive it down the street and park it at your place. Cause
Right. Okay.
their pain point and you already got to all these discounted RVs around you. So yeah, take off your hand for half the cost. You can drive home and not deal with the headache of it. Yeah, and if it's
Right.
been 4 or 5 years, they might want to see it. Like I'm sick of the RV life. I hate this thing. I want to be out of it. Like get rid of it. I've been in an RV working all the time. I'm over it. So
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sure I'll see some of that too soon enough where they're like, I'm just going to leave it here.
Yeah, for
just
sure.
arbitrage. I'm like, hey, you can buy it from party A, sell it to party C, you be party B, and make a little spread in there. Just start wholesaling around to people.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's a good idea too. I have a full I have a wholesaling business too. That's what I do full time is wholesaling. So, just trying to find the time to kind of put the money together for this the RV park though, I've just been kind of like putting it off, putting it off, putting it off.
So I
But when I
remind
saw you guys were coming on, I'm like, man, let me hop in here and maybe I'll get a little motivation to
There you go.
Yeah.
get
If
in
it's only
gear.
that much, yeah, you can definitely easily find a partner as long as you can make sense of the long-term return, right? You definitely want to see what that next 5 years looks like or so and see if you can get enough capital return in that initial raise.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, Tyler, I didn't even know you had a park until I said something about it, and then you were like, "Oh yeah, that's right, I do have a park."
Yeah. Oh, I forget about it. I mean, it's so I mean, it's super low maintenance, I don't have to deal with a whole lot. All the tenants are good. Since it's RVs, it's not like I have laundry there and all this stuff. It's like I just have a pole and sewer for them to plug into, and that's it. And they just send me the rent every month, and that's pretty much it. And then I got some mobile homes on there. Those are a bit of a headache sometimes, but I actually have them on Section 8. So
There you go. Yes.
it's not too bad, dealing with that.
So you obviously you own those homes.
Yeah, I own the mobile homes and I own the land. And it's all free and clear. So like if I need to get private money, they could be first position. For sure. So I just haven't been getting loud about it or letting anybody know that I have this opportunity available yet because I feel like I got to get all the ducks in a row and the numbers together and the forecast of what it's going to look like and all this stuff, So
Yeah.
just haven't put it together yet.
Yeah, well, if you got both going, that's definitely an opportunity. If you got mobile homes and RVs already in place there, you definitely have, I would say, a little bit of a challenge, but not too hard. So it's free and clear, and you've got both assets already on there. So I think
Yeah.
you can, if you find the time, you can easily rock that out for somebody who's thinking 110 grand wouldn't be hard at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just like wondering how to structure that too. Like, I guess it would be a debt partnership, and because I know there's like equity and debt, and I've been reading a lot about private money lately, but because that's like the next thing I want to get into. I've been wholesaling so long, trying to learn, get into private money, wholesale, do some flips and stuff like this, maybe. Um, and really looking into like buying apartments and stuff. But like now hearing you guys talking about like that's your whole strategy is buying mobile home parks. It's like I'm already kind of
Yeah.
doing that, so I'm like I've always wanted to use wholesaling as a vehicle to get into, buying multifamily. And, now it's like maybe more mobile home parks is the route to go, or RV parks, I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
and obviously learning how to raise private money, I think is a key aspect of that. So, I'm just learning I'm trying to figure out like how do you structure the terms, I guess, on a deal like that. On something like I'm talking about here.
Well, you gotta figure out your overhead first, your expenses, and then you can figure out the amount of profit you can make and project it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I guess I mean you'd probably want something like a balloon on something like this. Like nobody's gonna do like a long term, you know.
Well, yeah, most people want to pay that in 5 to 7 years.
Yeah. So
Right.
you 5-year balloon and you probably have to sell the asset at that point to or refinance to cash
Yeah,
them out, correct? Yeah.
refinance.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Unless you're doing an equity partner, right? But you might want to start to getting an appraisal first, see what your valuation is currently.
Yeah.
Or even like see what kind of DSCR loan valuation you could get. And that would definitely entice a lender to see what it's at right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
Or an equity partner, right?
Yeah.
Or if you find someone who needs to depreciate some money for a while, could be another option.
Okay. Yeah, that's all good ideas.
So are you gonna increase the spaces?
Yeah, that's the goal with the money is to increase the spaces, 12 to 24 pads. And I'm saying 12 to 24 because I know for every 12 they want like a fire hydrant and a certain like light pole and all these things per 12 units because that's the
Yeah.
space. And that's why I'm like if we're already in there, we might as well go the 24
Yeah.
pads, so I'm just kind of putting all the numbers together now and trying to figure out what it's all going to cost.
Well, you still
Right.
are gonna go RV or mobile home too, right? Because if you're gonna do some work now and the exit game or exit strategy is mobile home, you may want to lay some foundation for that. Versus doing RV, then having like redig up or rechange septic, whatever you're gonna do for mobile home because you have a bigger CapEx expense.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. This place was a mobile home park way back in the day, and it
Mhm.
got rezoned to residential because it wasn't used as a mobile home park for X amount of years.
Yeah.
So now it's just residential, and so like I got to go through the hoops of converting it back, right? So that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah. You want mixed use.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just hate dealing with that kind of stuff, dealing with the parish and but I guess it's just something that needs to be done, right? And do you guys do
Yep.
that a lot? Like you get these properties that might be residential and like maybe convert them
Oh
into
yeah, you gotta rezone them all the time.
rezone them all the time? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Tyler, I think that's probably your easier part. And I was gonna say the other good news is you were talking about getting your projections and all that stuff in a row. It's like, dude, that's just your pro forma. And
Yeah.
most people are full of shit on their pro forma anyway. So you'd be ahead of
Yeah.
most.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We have plenty of land people too, in like sub two community who do that and they're very comfortable at rezoning and parceling out land, so they could probably solve that pretty quickly in just a few months for you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's just something I've been putting on a back burner for way too long. And I'm like, I'm gonna get to it whenever. I'm just focused on my wholesaling business so much, trying to scale that to the point where I'm like been neglecting the mobile home park right in front of me, So
Yeah.
Yep.
So one thing might also want to do is check on your county's planning department. Ask them what they're gonna be doing for the next 5 to 10 years,
okay.
because that will reveal to you possibilities for the park.
Planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning, yeah, because usually they have projections of what they're gonna be doing for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They already know, they already have it in planning.
I'm gonna check that
Yeah.
out for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes government offices that long to do anything anyway.
Wait, what's that?
You said it takes a government office that long to do anything anyway.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah,
look
for
at
sure.
look at right where you are. Like they just shut down that stupid tunnel, right, to build a bridge. How long did it take them to do that? Like,
Shoot, I don't know, years.
right. How long did they know that the Bell Chase tunnel like either wasn't the code or just wasn't sufficient?
Oh man, yeah, no, it's and then now there's traffic all day, every day, and then they got the plant they're building, so it's just added to it. And school's about to start. It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
It's all about
Is
high
it?
and best use, as Brian was saying, right? I mean, piggybacking off that, because so where we are in Washington, the state is mandating a lot of the like in mobile home parks, particularly in some of the RV parks, well, actually mobile home particularly, but the owners have the right of first refusal to buy the park back during the time of sale. Because the state is pushing hard to enforce affordable housing. So they're making it difficult for developers to buy land from a mobile home park and convert it to commercial use or to an apartment building. So if your strategy is to sell it to a developer, right? And then like, well, you've lost an extra strategy if you can no longer do it by the state. But if you can go highest and best use is like, I'm gonna put an apartment building here or a convenience plaza or something, that may be a better exit strategy where you can get way more money in that 5-year plan. That's how you would find it out from the planning and zoning committee. They tell you what's going on there.
Mhm.
Chip. Okay.
Because up here, there's a like a 7-pad mobile home park up here, funny enough, on 4 acres for 9 million. And I was like, this it doesn't make any sense. Like your cash flow is like 30 grand a year, and the debt servicing would be like 50,000 a month, whatever. And it's because their assumption is highest and best use, and it's next to a new development of like a residential whole like subdivision and like a whole new commercial complex. So their thought is, well, this should be sold to a developer because it's already gone through entitlements. But the city's like, nope, this has got to stay affordable housing. So now their value at 9 million is now worth like 1 million.
Well,
So their exit strategy completely gets deteriorated because the city is not going to allow them to use that highest and best use.
Boy, I can only imagine how much of a fun conversation that was when they were told that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sucks.
Well, unfortunately, you learn, you gotta adapt. I mean, I think they've been there for a while, so it's not like they're like in debt for 9 million. They probably bought it for 10 grand 30 years ago. So I mean, 1 million, they're still making plenty of money on it. So
I can just see somebody like rubbing their hands together, like we're gonna get $9 million for by selling this to the best highest use, right? Developers, and then the city's like, nope, we're gonna yank that.
Right.
yeah. Yeah, I
Cities
mean,
and companies are good for that.
yeah. It sounds like you're already on both sides of the fence there anyway with what you do, Tyler. You already got Section 8, so it puts you in a good spot where if you have a Section 8 strategy, you have that, or if you have highest and best use being new development, sell it to a developer. Get the land study, get to go through the surveys, keep it new and fresh in like 2 years, 3 years, and you'll have an extra value for that.
Yeah, and it's something I've been wanting to really focus on more because I got into wholesaling. The whole point was to eventually acquire property and cash flow. And we all read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's like,
Yeah.
and for some reason I went and started a wholesaling business. And and I've been neglecting, I guess, the property that I do own, right? And now I'm like, man, how do I get this thing going? How do I get this cash flow up? How do I get this highest and best use of this property? And that's the question I've been asking myself a lot lately.
So it's start with the planning department.
Yep. Okay.
It'll tell you a whole lot.
Yep. I got them pulled up right here, and definitely got to get on their good side, right?
If
At least
need,
go to
yeah,
at least go to
Appreciate
the city council meetings. Sorry, Shane.
Bring
go
some
there.
donuts.
Yeah, go to there because when I was in commercial construction nationwide, I had to file for permits and stuff across the country. They would never get back, so I used to just fly to jurisdictions and walk into the door, and I would solve like pain points like on the spot that I would spend 4, 5, 6 months trying to email through. So
Right.
sometimes you go in, it's like you can make all this pain of like the unknown be resolved in like an hour or two. I'm like, all right, I know what to do. I got the next 3 or 6 months plan figured out now.
Gotcha.
The plan on showing up, be there, and just meet people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you guys?
It's really good, especially in smaller jurisdictions too, huh, Shane?
Yeah, I remember particularly in Memphis, Tennessee, I did one and it was like so like I had to fly and Uber around. It was such a strange little like it was like kind of like a shed I walked into. I had to figure out who to speak to, and I've been chasing this around, and I just signed a piece of paper, and like I got my permit. I was like, dude, I've been on this for months, don't know what to do. Like, oh, I just signed this piece of paper. But then, internal
Wow.
communication becomes an issue. Yeah, so there's just the government becomes it in itself obviously it has its own internal struggles. So sometimes just going there, you get right to the person you need.
Yeah. Do you guys have to deal with a lot of like resurveying of the land and stuff for a lot of these deals?
Not really.
Because that's something I think they've been requiring me. They like want to survey and like see where everything's at and for me to rezone it. Like they want to, and
We
that's
do
where I've been.
that underwriting, yeah. So in underwriting, we do get a survey. There's some engineering stuff we do. But yeah, generally you'll want a survey before you can do the um, utilities.
Yeah.
So yeah, because you'll have to bring in utilities to do all those pads.
Right.
Yeah, you'll have to do a full survey. That'll be required.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which is why we like being on the fun side, right? Because on the fun side, we can tell the operator to do it, or hopefully they've already done it. We don't have to go through the headache of dealing with it. We just need the proof of it.
Right. Right. And that's why you guys are buying stuff already zoned. You're not really dealing with a lot of that, right? You guys are already
Yeah,
buying stuff
exactly.
like ready to go.
Makes it a whole
Gotcha.
lot easier.
Yeah, you guys are like targeting RV parks, right?
Mhm.
How are you
Yeah.
guys marketing to these? And are you guys buying virtual or like all over the country or?
So we buy them virtually. We have a cold caller that calls them, seller direct. And we find them through websites and all kinds of ways.
That's awesome.
Yeah, seller direct mostly.
And
That's
then for the
awesome. Then,
fund, it's been mostly referrals because we're definitely sourcing bigger, more experienced. So actually, I put a post yesterday in social media, open to interviewing and chatting with some new operators. But yeah, a couple of them come from other RV groups, RV like Facebook pages, and then other mentorships.
that's awesome.
And obviously
Yeah.
LinkedIn, we've had quite a bit of we've met a handful of people on LinkedIn too, just from general outreach. So
Operators like that are helping you guys run the parks.
well, because on the fun side, right, we don't operate the park. We're in essence like you're talking now, Tyler. We're like the money partner in that scenario.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
the operator is a person who sourced the deal, did all this due diligence, had to figure out the pro forma, and then they present it to us, and then we do our own underwriting, fact checking, agreements of what they've predicted, and then we come together. But they're doing the day to day, the chatting. We're kind of just in the deal with their money, and kind of we're more passive investing on that.
Gotcha. Okay. I see. Gotcha.
We would be that
Cool.
110 grand you're looking for.
Oh,
That's the person that we would become in that role.
gotcha. So I got to package it up and bring it to you guys and be like, hey, this is what I got. This is what I got going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, we on the fund we're looking for at least $1 million deployment at a time just to make sense of the returns. But yeah,
Gotcha.
it makes sense.
In,
That's what you
in
would do.
essence. Gotcha. Gotcha. So what would you
Maybe Brian will do it for you.
I was gonna say, what would you recommend for someone like me looking to raise that money
Well,
to do this, to add
So
24 pads?
24 pad. So what you're looking at probably $15,000 to $30,000 per pad. So you need to figure, yeah,
Yeah.
you're bringing in utilities. You got to bring in utilities. You got permits. You got development. So yeah, at least 30,000 a pad, most likely.
Well, it depends. Are you doing concrete, gravel, rock?
It's already really hard ground. I mean, and they're not requiring me to really have like cement, concrete and all that stuff. I do know that much.
Is it
I think
cleared already? Do you need roads input or anything?
one road. I mean, I already have a road that goes all the way to the back of the land, but it needs to. I kind of have some plans already drawn out, and I went on Fiverr, had them kind of help me like draw up like the layout, I guess you could say, where the pads are going to go to the parish's specifics. But yeah, I mean, a little bit of a road, and I've talked to some people, and I know some people that were doing, they're putting pads up for a couple $1,000 a pad. And that's where I kind of got my numbers from, anywhere from 2,500 to $5,000 a pad.
Okay. That's
Yeah, I'd
good.
budget high then. Yeah, we usually do like 5 to 15,000, 10 to 15 on these bigger ones, but we're looking at concrete, right? Running utilities. Depends on your safety, but I would say probably 5 or 7 we would use to underwrite then. If you're
Yeah.
getting local quotes at 2 or 5, but double it, triple it
Yeah.
if you need, just to be safe.
Exactly. Yeah, of course.
And then take the money in a draw system, right? Tell the person I need 100 for sure, maybe 200, but only pull what you need at that time.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
when you do get a deal that requires $1 million of funding, now you know where to bring it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. No, yeah, because like right now I'm scaling this wholesaling business. We're got a team going. We're kind of building that, and just that's how I generate that's my 9 to 5, right? But eventually want to get into the multifamily space or mobile home. I really have always been intrigued by like the RV parks and stuff, but it's like that missing piece of bringing the money in. So
Do you
I
have your own money to lend at all?
think I would have a little bit and some collateral on some other properties, maybe like in that sense. Yeah.
Because as Brian said, another way to figure this out would be like lend your money to someone else's deal and see what they're doing, what they're offering, and get almost
Gotcha.
like you're getting paid to learn in that scenario.
Gotcha.
50 grand or whatever you got at someone's deal, maybe they would show you the paperwork and what they're doing and how they presented the deal to you, and you can mimic that when you present your deal to someone else.
Gotcha. Okay. I understand. Awesome.
Yeah, if you say, "Hey guys, I got money to lend," you'll have plenty of friends tomorrow. Don't worry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Plenty
you're
of
right.
friends tomorrow.
That's why Brian doesn't talk about himself. He didn't need any more friends.
Right?
Yeah,
More friends like those at least.
yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah. But otherwise, yeah, as Brian said, yeah, LinkedIn's a good way to promote networking events, IRA events, life insurance events, business buying events, search funder events. Gosh, I mean, I would say every event is probably pretty good. Only thing I get leery on putting up is real estate events, because most real estate people at events are there looking for money as well.
Yeah.
Not always the case, and there's always gems, right? But like 90%, 95% or more are looking for something than they are giving in terms of cash. So
Yeah. And then if they are giving you cash, they're probably savvy investors that want a very big portion of the deal. or or like it's not a debt partnership, it'd be more of like an equity split, which is fine in a lot of cases, I guess too, especially if you're new.
if the numbers
Yeah.
make sense, you might have to go equity for sure. But I mean, yeah, they
Yeah.
may be more savvy, but they may also move faster for you, right? A new investor, like you go like try to convince your best friend down the street may take forever. And we have friends we've talked about for a few years, still won't make the leap of faith for money. But like, I met Brian and we already exchanged money and it took like 35, 45 days, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
he already knew what to do. He knew he felt safe enough and educated enough to do it. So he didn't have to go like spend years figuring out that he was an expert to feel safe. He already did all that work before we met.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
but it's a matter of like you may spend more, but you're also gonna move faster. You're gonna get it
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot more way more important, moving quick,
Yeah, and you'll learn as well too, right? And the goal is give up majority if you had to. If someone can teach you how to take that whatever
Exactly.
years and turn it into a multi-million-dollar situation, then who cares?
Exactly. I agree 100%. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Good deal.
All
Yeah.
right, maybe I'll call you after this and we'll talk about those 2 smaller parks that I found that you might be interested in.
For
Wait,
who?
was that?
I said I'll call you after this and we'll talk about those 2 smaller parks that were down the coast that that you might be interested in. The ones you and I talked about the other day.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The one in
Holly Beach
Oh.
and
yeah,
Gillian.
I remember. Yep. Yes, sir. Yeah, we could definitely, the seller wants to do he's willing to finance it. So
We got some people on the way to connect you guys with, especially in like Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama. We got some people who buy very different parks than we would buy, and they're open to thinner deals potentially.
Yeah.
okay. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I like structuring seller financing on deals too. I've picked up some multifamily property, small multifamily property structure and seller financing. So I think that's potentially something we could do there. And I think it's just like finding the money for the down payment sometimes, and then having them come in as like the equity partner.
Mhm.
So 'cause I'm really good at finding deals and I can negotiate deals. A lot of times just from being in the wholesaling game so long, it's just, putting them together. Sometimes I'm like, how do we take this down? And I got that wholesaling mindset where I'm just like, just get rid of it and on to the next one, on to the next one.
Well, I mean, as a wholesale, right, you control the whole deal. So why not, instead of selling the deals for assignment fees, sell them for equity?
Yeah.
Tell me you want to keep 10% of the deal when you sell it to them, and tell them there's
Yeah.
no assignment fee, I just want 10%.
Okay. Yeah.
Then you're gonna build a huge portfolio by wholesaling all the deals and keeping a portion of every one. And then you have, as minority partner, you don't have to deal with any of the headaches.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Then you can leverage your portfolio, then you can be worth a lot, then take a huge line of credit and then go buy a bunch more.
Yeah.
Well, and Tyler, that's what I was telling you with us in capital raising. Like when we're doing that for SFRs or whatever, we do the same thing. We're like, we want equity, right? Because that's how we are able to kind of navigate around like the SEC rules as far as like I'm not raising for your deal, I'm raising for our deal.
Right. Correct. Yeah, that makes sense.
That
Yeah,
way,
that's
that
awesome.
you're not changing your workload, you're not taking new tasks on, you're not hiring new people, you're doing what you already do and just getting paid differently.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you would go into a partnership. So instead of me assigning it to my buyer, I'd say, hey, look, I'm going to give you the deal, $20,000 lower, right? Then you're going to get it at my price. Just let me get, 10% equity. We go in an LLC together and
Mhm.
yeah, that's it.
So I would
Oh,
do
that's
That's it.
awesome.
LLC and operating agreement.
I never even
Yeah.
thought of that. That's awesome.
Operating agreement is key, because then that way you have some kind of structure if you ever have to get out of that partnership with them. Since you're a minority partner, it would usually be with you getting bought out. But, yeah, having that operating agreement is key. I'm dealing with that right now with one of the LLCs I'm a part of.
Just make sure you don't partner with someone's got a bunch of judgments and liens and sketchy things about them.
Yeah, gotcha. So do
But
your
get a
due
hold of Brian.
diligence.
Brian's your guy to make that clear. Put in a trust and keep it free of the nuances, because Brian also does trust formation for people. So
I do.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
guys, I think what we'll probably do is we'll probably tidy this up anyway. We're getting close to, pushing time. I know, Brian, you have to run. So is there any final thoughts that y'all have? Any advice for newer investors or people at like RV parks?
Well, RV parks are the best cash flowing asset in real estate. So I'd say find a park. Yeah.
yeah, just like do Tyler's doing, right? Find it out there. Give it a shot. Look at it. It is, it's a weird hybrid of small boring business with a mixture of multifamily with like a blending of single family residence, right? It's got the same feel but a different vibe for it. But yeah, I mean, parks are where we prefer to be right now. They're unique, right? And then like obviously mobile home adjacent, we get tied together. We are different, but we are similar. But we do think RV parks have a slightly better spread on them, but there are significantly less. RV parks, I think there's like some 15,000 between the US and Canada, where mobile home parks are some 46, 47,000. So RV parks are still significantly less in terms of the number, but it just makes that each deal that much sweeter and you can find it. But yeah, on the fun side, yeah, we're always looking to meet other people who are operating parks or looking to operate parks, willing to answer any questions. And we're obviously looking at parks to fund. And obviously, Adam, we work together. Any help with raising capital, right? We're paying people when they raise capital for us, and that capital gets redeployed into parks. So
And finally, where do they find y'all? What kind of website, social media handles, where you want them to go?
You go to wisechoicefund.com or see here. Yeah, it's where we're at. We're also on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, we're under Wise Choice Fund. And you can find us individually, Brian Rice and Shane Thompson.
And the offering memorandum is offering.wisechoicefund.com.
Yep.
that's probably our all encompassing one, offering.wisechoicefund.com, because that will funnel to our investor portal, to the website, FAQs, and you can also like see our bios and probably link back to LinkedIn or other social media.
Cool. Well, guys, I appreciate y'all coming on. Like I said, this made episode 20 and this definitely made it a good one. I had a great time. As everybody knows, if you got value, if we made you think, if we made you laugh, if we made you smile, just do us a favor, recommend the show to a friend and come back and see us next week. So until next time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. See y'all later.
Later.